What is economics, by the way? Do you know that economics exists because of scarcity? And scarcity is the state of being scarce or in short supply. Scarce means insufficient for the demand. Ibig sabihin, shortage is coming. Hindi change is coming, okay? Because of scarcity, society with its limited resources, aren't we forced to choose among the available choices or alternatives? Why, when, where, what, and how to buy, work, save, and spend are the choices we have been dealing ever since the world began. Hindi ba? 20 pesos lang ang pera ko, but I have to choose between buying a cola or something edible. Hindi mantika. Edible is something that can be eaten safely. Firms face the same predicament also on how to produce and how many should they hire. Kaya ba nating dagdagan o improve ang existing features ng produkto natin? Are we ready and capable for domestic expansion? Are we ready going international? You see, economics is the study of those choices and we do it every day. Hanggang sa dulo ng walang hanggan. Okay, principles of economics. Kung may prinsipyo ka, meron din ako at meron din ang economics. And what is principle? Principle is the fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior, pundasyon ng iyong pinaniniwalaang katotohanan. For a chain of reasoning, like in a situation where we failed to convince or change our friend's decision towards something regardless of how we deliberately persuade them kasi yun ang alam niyang tama at ang pagtindig sa kanyang desisyon ay dahil sa kanyang prinsipyo. It is simply the fundamental source or basis of something. That is what is principle. First principle. A trade-off involves a sacrifice that must be made to obtain a desired product or experience. Pag may sinakripisyo ka para makuha, maramdaman, maranasan, o matikman ang isang bagay, then that event or situation is a trade-off. Okay? First example, going to a party at night before your midterm leaves less time for studying. It is a question of what to do. Now, the trade-off in going to a party is the time you should have spent for studying, because we cannot be present in different places at the same time. Can you party while studying? Well, technically, no. You go to a party, leaves less time for your studies, or versa. Okay, the second example, having more money to buy stuff requires working longer hours, which leaves less time for leisure. Now, it is a question of how long should I work? Now, the trade-off in earning lots of money will require you to work beyond regular working hours, means overtime, sidelines, part-time jobs like I do because I need more money to buy lots of stuffs, leaves me or you to have no or limited time for enjoyment. Okay. Now, Society faces trade-off. The efficiency versus equality. Now, efficiency means when society gets the most from its scarce resources. Ibig sabihin, in spite of the limited resources that the society or the household has, natutugunan pa rin ang lahat ng pangangailangan at benepisyo ng bawat miyembro. That is efficiency. Mabuting halimbawa nito ay ang nangyayari sa ating mga tahanan. Our parents or guardians have been facing difficulties in how they will provide healthy foods and education for each of the member. And despite the limited money and financial credit lines they have, naitatawid pa rin nila ang lahat ng ating pangangailangan by choosing the best choice among the choices. Dahil maliit lang ang sahod ni nanay at tatay, si nanay o si tatay ay namitas ng gulay sa bakuran o sa kasalinganan para na ay makaon ng tibok pamilya. Bisan tuod, isa ra ka isda ang nasa refrigerator. And that is being efficient. Okay. In the business sector, you as an entrepreneur are being efficient if you are able to maximize the level of your production. Lahat ng raw materials mo nagagamit, hindi nabubulok sa storage. Lahat ng workers mo are well-versed and all working consistently. And that is being efficient. Another application of being efficient in the part of a worker, employee, professionals like us is you are compensated enough with the effort you had exerted, then that is efficient. For example, if the basic monthly salary of an entry government teacher position is 22,000 and the teacher gets all of it for his own consumption, then that is efficient in a way that the teacher is able to harvest the fruits of his labor. Now, if the government impose equality on income distribution, which leads to redistribution of one's wealth to another or to other, then the teacher, for example, will not get the most of his effort or service, and that is not being efficient. When this reason, this reduces incentive to work and produce. Wala na magti-teacher, magdo-doctor, mag-attorney kasi para saan pa ang pag-aaral na ilang taon kung equal lang naman pala ang income na matatanggap ng bawat isa. And that shrinks the economic pie. Kung sa pizza pa na, imong bahin, dili na mao sa imong ga-expect nga dapat imuha kay nakuhaan, and that does not satisfy you, and that is not efficient. To say in the larger picture, kukulangin tayo ng mga specialists and professionals, and that is why the government usually does not impose equality but equity. Therefore, you cannot be always efficient with equality. You cannot have both as there is always a trade-off. Understood? Okay. Example of equity initiated by the government. The Pantawid Pamilyang Filipino Program for Peace is a human development measure of the national government that provides conditional cash grants to the poorest of the poor. Diba? Everyone is not eligible to avail the said program, but the poor families. And this is being efficient in a way that the government is able to narrow down the country's poverty line. Okay. The second principle, the cost of something is what you give up to get it. Yun yung bagay na sinakripisyo mo para makuha, maramdaman, maranasan, o matikman. The opportunity cost. Will's trade-off emphasizes on the nature of the unchosen alternatives or choices, natural o pangalan lang pinagpipilian. Opportunity cost measures the impact of the latter. Ibig sabihin, ano ang makukuha mong benepisyo o outcome. To elucidate your foggy minds, let us use or reuse the preceding example. Going to a party a night before your midterm leaves less time for studying. The trade-off in going to a party is the time you should have spent for studying. You see? It is the nature of the choice you are implying, that time you should have spent for studying. While opportunity cost here is the higher grade you could have gained if you choose to study. And to be precise, it is a non-monetary opportunity cost, simply does not involve money. Di ba walang money na involved dito? Second example. Going to college for a year is not just tuition, books, and fees, but also the foregone wages. The trade-off in going to college is the job you could have been hired. But the opportunity cost here includes the money you could have earned from a job, but not limited to the cost for tuition, books, and miscellaneous fees. And it is a monetary opportunity cost. You see the difference? Okay, let us move on to the third principle. Rational people think at the margin. Rational people systematically and purposefully do the best they can to achieve their objectives. Well, rational people make decisions by evaluating costs and benefits of marginal changes. Pag nagdidesisyon ka, iniisip mo at tinitimbang mo ang mga bagay na pwede mong makuha o baka mawala sa'yo. Malulugi ka ba o hindi? That's it. And marginal changes is the incremental adjustments to an existing plan. Very comprehensible. You are rational kung nag-iisip ka ng tama. Okay. Marginal means one more or the change in something from an extra unit. The term marginal is widely used in the field of economics and is paired in many different forms like marginal cost, marginal benefits, etc. Okay? For example, when a student considers whether to go to college for an additional year, he compares the fees and the foregone wages to the extra income he could earn with the extra year of education. A rational student would evaluate his situation kung papasok ba siya sa kolehiyo o magtatrabaho muna siya ng isang taon. If the student values his education to land a stable job in the future or in the long run, the student should enlist himself to a college school. Agree? Well, it always depends on the situation. If you are in need of money at the moment for emergency purposes like for medication and recovery from a severe illness, going to a college might not be a wise decision. Okay, another example. When a manager considers whether to increase output, he compares the cost of the needed labor and materials to the extra revenue. Now, the manager is being rational if he can calculate and analyze their current resources to support the increase of output. Kaya ba niyang magdagdag ng tao? Kaya ba niyang magdagdag ng materyales to increase their production output with their current income? Everything must be studied first. Moving on to the fourth principle. People respond to incentives. Incentive is something that induces a person to act. In other words, the prospect of a reward or punishment. If you respond to incentives, then you are rational. For example, your parents promise to buy you a brand new car if you get a general point average of at least 1.25 at the end of the term. A rational person tends to strive in obtaining a 1.25 GPA at the end of the term. Won't you? You see, we get carried easily if there are incentives. Buy one, take one, 50% discount, bagsak presyo, limited stocks, limited edition. Ganon tayong mga consumers. Another example, when the price of an apple rises, people decide to eat fewer apples. Diba? At the same time, apple orchards decide to hire more workers and harvest more apples. In other words, a higher price in a market provides an incentive for buyers to consume less. That is the law of demand. And an incentive for sellers to produce more. The law of supply. As you can see, the influence of prices on the behavior of consumers and producers is crucial for how a market economy allocates scarce resources. Okay, one more example. If the gasoline tax goes up, people drive smaller cars and switch to public transport. Public policymakers should never forget about incentives, because many policies change the costs or benefits that people face and therefore alter their behavior. That being said, it will reduce the heavy traffic on urban cities, encourages people to drive smaller cars or more fuel-efficient cars, and reduce the pollution to bystanders. There you go. The first four principles mainly focus on how people make decisions. Now, we'll talk about the principles of how people interact. Principle 5. Trade can make everyone better off. Rather than being self-sufficient, people can specialize in producing one good or service and exchange it for other goods. That is the comparative advantage. With trade across the globe, countries can get a better price abroad for goods they produce and are way cheaper than could be produced at home. Kaya nag-aangkat tayo ng produkto because of scarcity. Our means of production of a certain good is not always possible. Halimbawa, Country A is a watery country. Every business establishments are surrounded by canals gaya ng sa Venice, Italy, and rich in all types of fishes. People in Country A specialize on fishing. So, basically, they are fishermen. Country B is rich in soil at lahat ng itinatanim dito o doon tumutubo. People in Country B are farmers and they do farming, of course. If Country A wants to grow fruits and vegetables for their own consumption, It will be costly, for they will have to undergo training because there are no farmers. With their limited space for farming, because country A, with its geographical feature, a watery country, they will have to dump an island of soil para may matamnan sila, and that is not being rational kasi magastos yon at almost impossible to do. Kung pipilitin, pwede, but the cost of producing one unit will be so much expensive than having an import. Mag-aangkat na lang sila sa country B because growing fruits and vegetables there is way more affordable sa kadahilanan na mas mabilis at madaling tumubo ang mga halaman doon. Less maintenance and less extra care. That will reduce costs such as fertilizers and training. Magiging mababa ang presyo kasi di ganun kamahal ang inputs for production. Up next, Principle 6. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Let us define what is a market. Okay. A market is a group of buyers and sellers. Well, need not to be in a single location. The typical market we have known is our local public market nga nasa TBCC. Indeed, it is a market but not limited to online platforms such as Lazada, Shopee, eBay, and many more. The advent of e-commerce was a breakthrough amongst nations where we can buy and sell across the globe wherever we are. That is so wonderful. Economic activities are organized if the society is rational enough to decide what goods to produce, how to produce them, and how much of each to produce, of course, and how and who gets them. We call this the target market. A market economy allocates resources through the decentralized decisions of many households and firms as they interact in the markets. Yes, of course, isn't it? Well, my decisions and your decisions take place because we respond to incentives. Given the limited resources we have, we dealt with lots of choices, trade-offs, and opportunity costs that are certainly inevitable. The seller know what we want and we buy them. Diba? You see, the money is circulating and so the lifeblood of the country. Nabubuhay ang ating ekonomiya. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, in his book with his insight, each of these households and firms acts as if led by an invisible hand to promote general economic well-being. Tama nga naman, di ba? We are organizing the economy without the government telling us what to buy, what to sell, what to work, and to spend. As we live each day, we all did participate in organizing the economy. The invisible hand works through the price system, which will induce us to respond to incentives as previously discussed. The interaction of buyers and sellers determines prices. Each price reflects the good's value to buyers and the cost of producing the good. The sellers will not sell their goods or services for a price equal or lower than the cost of production kasi walang profit yon kung masyadong mababa. And will not sell it beyond the buyer's willingness kasi kung mataas naman, hindi rin kikita. Prices guide self-interested households and firms to make decisions that, in many cases, maximize society's economic well-being. How do prices maximize economic well-being? As the market price of a certain good is high, the seller tends to produce more, and so the other firms too. When the supply is big enough for the market, because the seller do not want excess in supply, we call it surplus. Because it is inefficient to have unsold item stuck at inventory. The price of the good will go down, and there the demand and supply curves meet in equilibrium point. We call this the market equilibrium. See, the market is being organized as if led by an invisible hand. The seventh principle of economics: governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. The important role of government is to enforce property rights, such as copyright. It refers to the legal right of the owner of intellectual property, such as books, poems, plays, songs, films, and artwork. If dili copyrighted imong films, then bisag kinsa pwede mag-reproduce sa imong pagtuwad-tuwad or unsa pa na for their own advantage. With copyright, you are being protected and will induce the buyers to buy your films in an authorized agent or producers. Another property right is patent. A patent is a grant of protection for an invention. For example, you have successfully invented a cure for COVID-19. If your invention is patented for a period of time, you are the only one allowed to reproduce the said vaccine. Protektado ka and you will be rich in no time. Anyone who steals or pirates one's invention or intellectual property will be sued and may pay the damages or penalties, or worse, will be put behind bars, di ba? It is really imperative to be protected kasi madali lang mananakaw sa iyo yan. Wala na yung mag-singer, mag-artista, mag-invent, because it will shrink the economic pie. It will threaten the competition, and without competition, there will be no improvement, and hence not helping organizing our economy. In some cases, market failure is inevitable. It is when the market fails to allocate society's resources efficiently. The two common causes of this are the externalities and market power. Externalities when the production of consumption of a good affects bystanders. There are two types of externalities: the positive externalities and the negative externalities. We are pointing out negative externality that may cause market failure here, okay? Pollution is an example of a negative externality. As the car manufacturers try to increase their production, pollution diminishes the property value or health of people in the surrounding area. It is not being efficient as the social cost ang pagpapagamot sa mga epekto ng pollution over time exceeds the private cost. It is the cost of production. The society and its people are not getting the most benefits they can get from having a vehicle around the city or area. Kasi maraming maapektuhan ng pollution. Positive externality, on the other hand, includes actions that reduce transmission of disease and promote environmental protection and preservation, like agricultural businesses, which is obviously opposite from negative externality. That is why sometimes the government has to intervene to protect its people by imposing public policies to promote efficiency. And one best solution of this is through tax. Like the cigarillo, to reduce the reported cases of some respiratory infection, they impose higher tax for the latter. Higher tax will result to higher price. Higher price will induce the consumers to consume less. Tawag sa tax sa mga produkto na ito ay sin tax. Muna madunggan to sa TV nga. Sin tax. Are perceived to be either morally suspect, harmful, or costly to society. Okay? Government may alter market outcome by promoting equity. If the market distribution of economic well-being is not desirable, tax or welfare policies can change how economic pie is divided. Are you familiar with the train law? Tax reform, acceleration, and inclusion. Simplihan natin. For the government to generate funds for social services and infrastructures equitably, if your annual income does not exceed 250,000, then you are not subject for income tax. Ibig sabihin, yung mga mahihirap, hindi sila binubuwisan. And the more na mas malaki ang income mo, mas malaki ang tax mo to protect the poor from becoming poorer, whilst generating income from tax collection. An example for welfare policy naman is yung poor piece, yung sinabi ko kanina. Only the poor families or individuals are eligible to avail the subsidy to improve the market outcome of our Filipino people. Mga kababayan nating Pinoy, di ba? Well, we will stop at the 7th principle for now because the 8th, 9th, and 10th principles are more discussed and applicable in the macro level of economics, that is macroeconomics. So, bonjour, thank you.